Hello there, my friends. Chris Marcus here for Arcade Economics. And as you can see, my friend Bix there, he's ready to go. Bix, I was a little concerned when I woke up. I figured there'd be nothing for us to talk about. Maybe we could just watch paint dry. Nothing going on.
Nothing.
Uh,
Nothing.
Bix Weir of Road to Ruta. Bix, it's a pleasure to have you on here. Just in general, nice to see you as always, but especially these times where a lot of what you've been warning folks about day after day on your channel and through your research is playing out in front of us. So anyway, great to have you here. And how are you today?
I'm busy. Let me put it that way. I'm not happy this is all happening, that the road to Ruta theory is all coming true. I always knew it would be chaotic and it's going to get a hell of a lot worse before it ever gets better. But I understand it and I know where it's going, and I'm glad I've gotten so many people the right information, the right understanding of what's going on behind the scenes. There is a plan to get the bad guys out. There is a battle, obviously, going on right now, and every day I wake up, I say, okay, what am I gonna analyze today? What do I need to look at? And there's just so much to look at and talk about. But let's just go down the list. If you got a list, or we'll just
I know what you mean, because I've been thinking about it, where it's almost as if in 2007, 2008, you had 2 years of things happening, whereas it's really been compacted into the last 4 weeks. Because for most folks out there who were listening to Trump and the Fed that everything was great, it's like out of left field in 4 weeks, the economy's melted down. We're getting quarantined in our houses. So perhaps just taking us through, even if it's just the last week in particular with the Fed. I mean, why don't we just start there?
Well, the Fed, most of my research, I started the early days with GATA, the Gold Antitrust Action Committee, trying to end the manipulation of gold and silver. We figured out after a few years, that it was the banks that were actually doing it, the central banks and the U.S. government and all the governments around the world, and the regulators that were actually facilitating the manipulation of metals in order to carry on the unbacked fiat system. So it was pretty early on. And then 2007, I discovered the Fed Road to Ruta comic books and all that information there. I was like, holy crap, this is much bigger. This is actually people within the Fed looking to take down the controllers, the Rothschilds, the Rockefellers, all that, and implement a new system. And then you go back and you say, okay, when did this start? How did it start? And it really all goes back to the creation of the Fed in 1913. Was all about, it wasn't about the Fed taking over. That's not why Woodrow Wilson allowed them to do that. He knew that's what they wanted. He was not a fan of these bankers, but he also knew that they had found this massive hoard of gold in the Grand Canyon, billions and billions of ounces. Back then, there was only 130 million ounces circulating in the U.S. as money, and only 200 million that was circulating in the rest of the world. So 300 million ounces, and they're finding billions and billions of ounces in the Grand Canyon. That's how they scared Woodrow Wilson into approving the Federal Reserve Act. That's why they can never go back to that system, is they knew that it would cause such chaos and destruction of the current system back then in 1913, that they said, hey, let's just rig these markets and delay it and delay it and delay it. And it's been going on for, 110 years now, that they've been too afraid to go through what we're going through right now, the destruction of the old system and the implementation of something new. There's your history lesson in a nutshell.
Yeah, I mean, it's really hard to really piece all the different things happening together right now and see how they fit. Where, we've learned Trump says both sides of the argument, so he's got to be not telling the truth about half of it. What do you think's really going on behind the scenes? We've heard some people suggest that he's out arresting, a lot of these elites and politicians, and a lot of confusion about how real Corona is or isn't. What do you think is actually going on that we're not being told yet?
Well, I do think, I think Corona is real. I do think it's a bioweapon, not just some random virus that came out of a bat or whatever the original story was, which everybody's pretty much debunked. It was created and it was released on purpose I think it's part of the battle between the bad guys and the good guys. I do think it is absolutely real. The real percentage of people dying from it would be low if you had all the hospital beds and all this stuff like that. The moment that breaks down, which for today is the 20th, it was reported that some of the London hospitals have run out of beds now, so they have to turn people away. That's when the death rate really jumps into like the 10s and 20%. Because if it's controllable and you can put people on ventilators for a month or two, everything's fine. When everybody gets it, and I do think it is, everybody will get it within the next 3 or 4 months. Even if you hunker down the best you can, all you have to do is go outside once and you say, oh, wait a minute, I'm pushing a shopping cart. On that shopping cart, the people behind me, did they take the precautions? What have they done? Just standing in line anywhere, at the store or anywhere. It's like, I'm being breathed on from every which way. So I think everybody will end up getting it. The question is, can you strengthen up, fortify your body with enough vitamin C? Chaga mushroom is supposed to be good for you. Zinc, all the things you do such that you can survive it and move forward. So yeah, I absolutely think it as part of Cliff High's data for the next 5 years, we'll be dealing with this virus stuff. And the way we lived our life prior to this has changed. The entire world, socially, economically, functionally, has changed and will never go back to the way it was.
Yeah, and it was certainly shocking that, thank you for those incredible videos you did with Cliff, especially the first part where at the end it just breaks down sobbing, which I sent to a bunch of people who were all just hit home, where it's like, the guy seems really concerned. Part of what maybe in a sense you just answered, but where I've been confused, it's like I hear the death rate was, there was 7,000 people, and the CDC, at least on their website, says 56,000 people die each year of the flu. So on one hand, either the numbers aren't right, which certainly that's always possible with the government, or it's about to get a lot more serious, or else the response seems out of place again. It's hard when you get to the point. How do you trust anything they say? What's your take?
You can't trust anything they say, but at the same time, if you have a calculator, you can easily project out the amount of people that will get it, and then a percentage of them that will die, both if the healthcare system is working or if it's not working. And the argument in the beginning with this many people die from the influenza every year. The normal flu does kill people every year, but it doesn't kill them exponentially. And when you run the exponential numbers, because this virus is so easily transferred between human beings, either in close contact or leaving it on a surface or anything like that, we will all get this virus. So you run those numbers, and the numbers, they are doubling every 4 days, the amount of people who get it, which makes at a certain percentage rate will double the amount of deaths just by, it's the math. So you run those numbers and you're like, well, wait a minute, in about 2 or 3 weeks, we're going to blow by the old argument that the flu kills 56,000 people or whatever. I think it's 36,000 in the US. In a few weeks, we're going to blow by that, just because of the nature of exponential growth. Exponential goes like this, and then in the last 5 seconds of it goes straight up like a hockey stick. And just think about it, every 4 days doubling, and you run those numbers, and it's like by May there'll be 1 million people infected, and by June everyone will be affected. And because it's doubling, 1 million to 2 million, 2 million to 4, 4 to 8, and then all of a sudden in the last few seconds, bang, it's over. Everybody's got it, and then you got to calculate out how many people die from it normally. Obviously the older people and the people with chronic problems and things like that. But then with a breakdown of the healthcare system and no beds and no ventilators and no treatment, how many people are going to die? And that's when the numbers jump from 1 or 2% to 10 to 20%. And that's why China doesn't give out any numbers anymore. China at this point is decimated. And I would not be surprised if they had a death rate of 20% which would be what, 1.4 billion people in China, and 20% of that is 280 million people dead. I mean, the numbers are just astronomical when you run those numbers, and that's why all of a sudden New York's shutting down, California's shutting down. I hear this weekend the entire state, the entire country is going to be shut down on some form of lockdown, and then it gets worse, and then it turns into some kind of military control, and then it turns into people saying, I've been cooped up for 2 weeks, I can't survive like this, I don't have any money coming in. Everybody goes out and says, I'm opening my doors for business, I don't care if I get the flu or not. And that's when the insanity comes in, and we're going to deal with this crap for 3 to 5 years. It was in Cliff's data. And the flu comes back every year, and Cliff has it going around the world 3 times, 3 years. And then we deal with it for a total of 5 years. So, and this goes back in Cliff's data back to the 1990s, his original WebBot, the things he was looking for. He was looking for Sun Microsystems. He was like trying to game the stock market through language and all that. And it turns out he kept getting this thing called sun disease. And it was all throughout his data for 20 years. And then lo and behold, here we are with coronavirus, corona being equated to, the sun has a coronavirus disease, sun disease, there you go. And it's playing out just like he said in his original data. And I've been reading his original reports, and I'm like, this isn't good for us for a very long time. So yeah, if you think things are extreme now with locking down New York and California, you wait until 1 million people are infected, or 2 million, or 20 million. Wait till everybody gets infected, and you'll see extreme. So that's what we're headed into. And no economic system can last very long in that environment. The banks are all done right now. It's just a matter of when they're going to declare, because no one's paying their bills because they're not working. And it's like, and China shut down. And I mean, there's so many things that are going on right now. But yeah, I keep telling myself there's got to be a silver lining here. And that silver lining would be the destruction of the old criminal system.
Yeah, of course. I'll point out, is there anything silver can't do? There's got to be a way silver can fix this. And
yes. Well, colloidal silver is good on contact. So if you wash your mouth out with colloidal silver, if you use an atomizer and breathe it in, it'll kill the silver that's at least in your mouth and in your nose. It won't get into your body. It won't get into your lungs. So those people saying, oh yeah, just drink colloidal silver and you'll cure the coronavirus. It's only on contact. It won't get into if coronavirus goes into your stomach, the acid kills it. The problem is you breathe it in, it gets into your lungs. And the colloidal silver isn't going in there. Even with the atomizers, it only really goes into your nostrils, partly to your throat. Yeah.
And so have you been staying home pretty much? I've been on a self-imposed quarantine the last week or so since someone was, and I've been watching a lot of your videos and figured, all right, because I have traveled, in case I have it, don't want somebody else to get it. Are you guys allowed to leave in California, or what's it all looking like right now?
Well, yeah. Let me tell you where we are and how long has this thing been going on. It started, I think, about Monday or Tuesday. I think it was kind of soft self-quarantine. If you can work from home, and blah blah blah. And then Gavin Newsom said, okay, we're going to go. It was first San Francisco and the like 5 counties within the San Francisco area. My house was one of them in those counties. Was okay, we need to not go to work. And it was very soft rules. They were saying, and they said till April 7th. So everybody's like, well, what am I going to do? Okay, I'll call it a 2-week vacation. And at first it was people were kind of going out. And I've noticed recently, now that more counties are doing it, and now Gavin Newsom has said all of California is doing it, you slowly look, and at first there was a lot of people out, walking their dogs around the street, joggers. I'm like, I didn't even know this many people lived in my neighborhood. And then it's like more, hey, you got to keep 6 feet from everybody. The rules are getting a little stricter, less people out on the street. I think that, all the essential stuff is open, and all the restaurants have takeout, which was kind of fun for them for a little bit. But now people are starting to say, well, this is the real deal. When it comes to April 7th, I think is the day originally they said is all you'll have to hunker down for. When that comes and goes, which it will, because things will be so much worse by then, that's when you're going to start to see people saying, screw this. This is not how I'm going down. I'm going to get out there. I'm going to open my business. Anybody who wants to come to my restaurant can come. Screw the government. I don't give a shit. They're not giving me any money. I have to feed my family too. And there's people in the community. So everybody's going to be infected. You're going to get it anyway. And so, yeah. And will the banking system even stay afloat between now and April 7th? That is a gigantic question mark, because they're all leveraged. They're all in a fractional reserve system. They lose $1, they lose 10. So it's great going up, because every dollar you make, you're gonna make 10 more on the creation of more money. When it comes down, you are destroyed if it goes down 10%. And behind the scenes, it's so bad. But they know it's unrecoverable. Even though the Fed has pumped out trillions, it'll do nothing. It isn't really a monetary issue. Yes, the banks think money can solve everything, and the industries are saying, yeah, we need a bailout for the airline industry, the travel industry, the restaurant industry, the liquor industry, the car industry, the oil and gas, and we need a bailout for everything. It's not a monetary issue. It's the end of the just-in-time delivery system. China is not and will not open up trade with the United States ever again. Trump has assured that, with him calling it the Chinese virus. And they know exactly what's going on. They don't need the United States at all, because they have they had 1.4 billion people they could use as customers. Now they probably got, a portion of that they have as customers. They don't need the United States, but then the United States needs them to make our products and our medical, all the medicines come from China. I didn't know that until a couple of weeks ago when all this started. I'm like, holy crap, we have no medicine, no aspirin even very soon. So yeah, things are going great. How are you?
Yeah, it reminds me of that old line. Other than that, how did you enjoy the play, Mrs. Lincoln? So
that's a good one.
I mean, it's actually kind of interesting in the sense that maybe this will force the U.S. manufacturing base to be revived, because, and that's one of the things I've thought about when I learned of how some of the Austrian scholars, even back in 2008, 2009, were saying if you let free market function, these things could be healed. And, if we have people starving and don't have food, but there's a lot of unemployed people, I like to hope that we'll have some government out of the way and let some free markets function here and hopefully end up with a good outcome. Although, speaking of things that have been less than ideal, obviously you mentioned the Federal Reserve, and I'll tie this into silver in a second. But before we get there, do you get the feeling that something broke in particular last Friday? Because last Thursday we had $1.5 trillion go into the Fed puts into the markets. And I thought it was interesting. By Friday, they said the schedule they had planned to purchase treasuries on, was X amount over a month. And then they're like, we're doing half of it today. It just felt as if maybe something Lehman-like happened on Friday that we're not being told, but that cycle we see now where it's all right, we'll throw $1 trillion in, that doesn't work, we try $2 trillion the next day. Do you get the feeling that there was something big on Friday in there in particular that happened?
Well, absolutely, yeah. And it goes back to something big happened on September 11th of 2019. That's what started the whole bank repo thing the next Monday. And it's just a takedown of the bad guys. Absolutely. And that's why they unleashed the virus and all that stuff. But there's been three big moments. One was September 11th, something happened, and then they bailed out. The repos started the next Monday, Tuesday, because the banks were pretty much toast. They were done. And then the end of the year, they had massive repo going on, and they had to tuck it all into the FICC, which is a division of the DTCC in the repo market. So if you look at the data on who was taking out all these repos, turned out the FICC, which is a clearinghouse within the DTCC, was the largest participant in the repo market. And everybody's like, what is going on here? And then with the data, you can click down and say, oh, it's the normal players. JP Morgan, BlackRock was in there, interestingly, and some of the big banks. But why are they having to go through the FICC? to get these repos, and why don't they just do it normally through the central bank? It's because the treasury bonds beneath them that they're using as collateral have multiple owners. And it's the DTC's responsibility to clear all transactions, make sure everybody's doing things by the book, and they dropped the ball years ago, and it's just coming out now. So nobody is willing to take the collateral of the big banks anymore, even though they're treasury bills, because they've been thrown into derivative contracts, and all that is going sideways. So they don't trust overnight money even. And then you're right, something else happened, and it was the understanding that this thing, this coronavirus, is not going to stop, and the supply chain of all goods coming from Asia has stopped and will not open up again. And that's the reason it's not going to open up again, even if China is telling the truth that they have no more coronavirus or whatever they're saying, which I don't think. I think they're lying. But we're about to go to war with China. I think we'll trade nuclear bombs before we trade any type of goods. China's not going to supply us with any goods. So yes, it's great we can rebuild our manufacturing base, but to do that, it takes years. I mean, just the machine tools needed to create the parts and the raw materials to build a car takes years and years and years of capital, of time. Most of those machine tools are made in China now anyway. So even the raw materials for a gigantic portion of what we use in high tech come from China as well. And if China is not going to play ball with us, because we're in a fight with them, probably they were trying to take over, and Trump's like, no, no, no. It's going to take years to rebuild even a slightly functioning system. And I don't think a lot of it won't even work because the banking system won't be there to pump artificial funds into this stuff. We're screwed. The old system is dead. And the day they declare it dead will be the day that the banks close up. And I don't see it getting past April.
Wow, so you think it's that close?
Well, they have to declare earnings. And again, and when you're a leveraged lender and you're leveraged 10 to 1 or 100 to 1, if you have derivatives, you're done. When you lose 10%, all your tier 1 capital is gone, and you got to either get a bank bailout or close your doors. So, and that's the majority of banks out there. That's what's going on, because they all invest in the same things too at the same time. That's why all the stock market went up for so long. Everybody's told to invest in the same thing, the same stocks, the same bonds, the same allocations. It's all great when it's going up because it gets bigger and bigger and bigger. Everybody's doing the same thing. Coming back down is like a fire hose in a Dixie cup, and you can't get out. And it's going to keep going down and keep going down and keep going down, even though they're still rigging the markets.
Yeah, and when you talk about investing in the same thing, in the same direction at the same time, of course, you see how I tied that into silver. I can take any conversation, turn it to silver. I've been thinking about a few things from things you've mentioned in your videos, especially when we think about what happened in September. Because also, I mean, in September, we have the repos start. As you pointed out, we have JP Morgan guys getting arrested. Was also maybe a week or two before that, but I think it was September 4th or 5th maybe, where silver hit its high and reverted to its normal pricing pattern, which is just, it's funny. I was sending someone a message that told me something about silver. I said, we're only down 30 cents, which is a good day for silver. But I mean, do you think any of that may have been related to some of these banks that are short silver getting a margin call in early September? Could that have played into whatever led to the repos? And to be clear, this is just a speculation on my part, but curious, any thoughts on that?
Yeah, absolutely. And it completely coincided with the JP Morgan traders getting brought up on manipulation charges and then switched over to RICO charges. Yeah. Now, the RICO charges is racketeering charges, which the penalty is very interesting in racketeering charges. You aren't, it's kind of unlimited as far as how much you can go after someone. But with RICO charges, it's you can sue someone and they'll have to pay 3 times what you stole. So when it comes to silver and the charges against JP Morgan and gold, they're taking gold. Basically what they're doing is shorting the paper market and taking the physical to get cheap prices, and then they load it up on physical, and then they let the entire system fall apart. So with the RICO charges, JP Morgan, if they do have the 1 billion ounces that Ted Butler says they do, which I think they do, I think they have more, they would have to pay back 3 times that, not in dollar terms, but in silver. So they would have to pay back $3 billion in silver. I think we froze up. I can't hear you on my side. Oh, no, there you are. Are you there?
There we go. I think we're clear.
Okay. Did you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you now. We're freezing a little, but it sounds like you're good now.
Yeah, I'm good. On my side, you're the one freezing. I don't know whose connection is worse.
Well, I can hear you now, so if you want to keep going.
Yeah, it's funny how they kind of mess with our communications when we're talking about silver and the criminality at companies like JP Morgan. You know, the amazing thing to me is they've indicted 6 JP Morgan traders, and word is that they're going to indict the company as well, and yet they're still allowed to trade the way they do and manipulate markets, and they're still the custodian of the SLV silver from BlackRock. BlackRock is a huge part of this manipulation.
And I'm curious, do you think the Department of Justice is aware that the silver price has gotten absolutely torched the last month and that there's a physical shortage of silver? I mean, does that come up in the investigation? Does anybody notice it? I mean, what do you think's going on with that investigation right now?
It's not a secret. I mean, the manipulation was part of the way the United States dealt with everything over the last 100 years. And so the invention of computer modeling, computer trading back in the 60s and 70s, the invention of the current version of the CFTC was at the same time. They were built at the same time. Alan Greenspan was writing the programs for the Federal Reserve System back in the early 1970s, and they set up the CFTC to run cover for the manipulation so they can go off a gold standard because France was trying to take all their gold back. It's all part of the plan. I mean, and when you look back, it's so obvious. But obviously in the middle of it, when there was less information available, everybody's like, oh yeah, gold price went too high and got crushed. And the Hunt Brothers silver had nothing to do with the Hunt Brothers. The Hunt Brothers at the most had 130 million ounces of physical silver, where JP Morgan now has over 1 billion ounces. Where's the government? Did the laws change between then and now? It is ridiculous what has been done. And then the real fight right now is between the good guys within the government and JP Morgan, Jamie Dimon and Blythe Masters. Blythe instantly disappeared from her crypto company that was trying to take the place of the DTCC. And that was a little over a year ago. And then Jamie Dimon, did he have a heart attack? Is he in Guantanamo already? Nobody really knows. We do know that it was JP Morgan that destroyed the repo market. So what kind of payback's going on behind the scenes? It's really ugly out there. And the biggest problem I have with Trump right now and the good guys supposedly is that they're lying. Everybody's lying. Everybody's cheating. Everybody's stealing. There was no recovery. The only recovery in the economy was the market rigging factor of the economy. Every time I see Austin Goolsbee, he's this guy.
I remember him.
Yeah, Obama's one of the guys on the Obama's economic team who was taught by Larry Summers at Harvard about if you build it, they will come type of economies. It's called behavioral finance. And if you pretend things are great, everybody's going to go out and spend, and they will be great. And that's what Trump has been saying. Oh yeah, everything's great, and everybody knows it's complete manipulation and bullshit. And he hasn't stopped lying. So if there's anything I'm going to blame Trump for, it's continuing the lie. And this whole coronavirus, if it is a bioweapon unleashed by the bad guys, it didn't have to be this way. They could have ended this system years ago, decades ago. They should have ended it back in 1913. So we're having to pay the price for what our ancestors passed on. And I have no intention of passing this on to the next generation. So we need to end it now. And that's kind of what's going on. There is no way out of it. We need to end this now and start something honest and truthful, and something we can be proud of instead of something we have to hide.
I hear you, and that's why I think there's a lot of others that fit into this. Sure, appreciate what you share on your channel, and I mean it's kind of nice getting. I get my Wall Street Journal alerts, but I also get my Bix alerts, so I know at least one of them is going to be real. So Bix,
play off the two. Say, who's right this week?
yeah. Well, final question for you before we wrap up here. This should be a fun one. I asked you this, maybe it was almost a year ago, but maybe we'll get an update today. Your thoughts on Cliff High's $600 silver forecast, and how about you give if you feel like it, of course, what is Bix's silver prediction for July 1st of this year?
Well, okay. First, we'll go for the Cliff High $600, which I talked to him about when he did a special screening for my Litecoin Summit event. And he said, yeah, $600 is in the cards right after we go through this bump. And he said, but you're not going to want to live in a $600 silver world. And I'm like, holy shit. Well, back then, that was September of last year that he did that interview with me. Back then, I'm like, well, yeah, sure I would. I got $600 for my silver, and I'm doing fine. And now I'm looking at, holy shit, he's right again. The world that I see coming down the pike, nobody's going to want to live in. So yes, I do think $600 silver is right around the corner, but it's not going to be in a world that we want to live in. I do not, when you said, okay, what is it, July 1st, you want to know the price of silver?
Or if you have another date that is interesting to think about, but
it's a good a date as any date, truthfully. If the COMEX is still up and running, yes, it will be under control. It will be trading within $12 and $18, and because it's under control. The moment the COMEX stops trading, which I think is approaching very fast, and all these exchanges go down, then we can start with, okay, we need to create a new exchange for metals and the stock market, the bond market, new exchanges where the real thing is traded for real dollars, whatever the new dollar is at that point in time. If people think that's a cop-out answer because it doesn't give an answer, the future of silver, I would say you can equate 4-to-1 with gold. I think we'll hit the 4-to-1 ratio. In the ground, I think it's 8-to-1, but there's obviously silver is more necessary in the high-tech future that we're running into. So I think the 8-to-1 is probably a little high for a natural price discovery of gold versus silver. I think it'll go to 4-to-1. Then we have all the gold in the Grand Canyon. That type of stuff could run it like 1-to-1. 1 ounce of silver would equate to 1 ounce of gold. And then where would gold price be? It depends if the system stayed together. Depends if the COMEX is still up and running. Today it should be $30,000, $40,000, $50,000 an ounce, and that would put silver at $30,000, $40,000, $50,000 an ounce. Silver is much, much more important metal, especially with the cryptos now serving Bitcoin serves an even better store of value than gold, I believe, these days. So, that's arguable with the gold bugs, but for me, the future is if you want to buy gold today, buy a lot of silver now at 120-to-1 ratio, and then swap it for gold later when the ratio settles in. I can't.
Yeah, and who would have figured we'd be seeing? Well, are you able to hear me now?
Yeah, now I can.
I mean, it's like, who would have figured we'd be seeing a 120, 125 gold to 1 gold to silver ratio yet? Nonetheless, that is where we stand.
They could set the price with the computer programs on the COMEX. They can set the price to 0 and shut down the market. We got to keep in mind that it's not the real price of silver that we're looking at. It's a construct of a computer program invented in the 1960s.
Yep. And like you pointed out throughout the call today, I think how we treat each other, how we react to things, I don't know, maybe we'll be doing YouTube a month from now, or maybe we'll be finding out how to get food from point A to point B. I found there's, in some strange ways, something about it that's a little bit peaceful to me, where it's like all the things I normally worry about, we're seeing them change. And I guess the one thing we can control is how we treat each other and respect ourselves. And appreciate just the way you present a lot of challenging information for folks, but in a positive way, and all that you do. And just wrapping up, if you could mention the site where people can find you and all that.
Sure. I'm doing most of my work on YouTube. So it's Road to Ruta YouTube channel. And then I have a website, roadtoruta.com, and Patreon channels. It's at Road to Ruta or just Road to Ruta. Everything's Road to Ruta, which is the name of a Federal Reserve Bank of Boston set of comic books and instructions on how to leave the old system and get onto a gold monetary system.
Never been more timely than now. Links for all that in the description below. Bix, thanks so much. Always great to catch up with you, and we'll have plenty to talk about this year.
Absolutely. Be safe.